Hey everybody, Who's Your Jedi here again with another review for you. This time I'm going to be talking about episode 6 of season 1 of Ultimate Spider-Man called Why I Hate Gym Class. Now overall, I think this is a mixed episode, but a solid one. There are quite a few good points to this episode, but there are also quite a few bad points. So let's get right into it. Alright, now the main thing that I have to talk about this episode is the villain that we get here, and that is, of course, Taskmaster. Now, Taskmaster is a villain who has enjoyed quite a bit of popularity in the comic books in about the last 20 years, and with good reason. He's a very formidable villain who can present a challenge to just about any hero, and he's got sort of an interesting sense of humor, and to be honest, quite a good costume. So, from the comics, there is a lot to like about Taskmaster, and most of that manages to make it through here into this episode. And I cannot applaud the Ultimate Spider-Man team enough for casting Clancy Brown as Taskmaster. Folks, I gotta tell you, I love me some Clancy Brown. Now, if his voice sounds familiar to you, this probably shouldn't be a surprise. In animation, he's probably best known as being the voice of Lex Luthor on Justice League, but he's got a really impressive resume of stuff that he's done. Besides Lex, he's also been, of course, Mr. Krabs on SpongeBob SquarePants. I'm sure many folks, some of the younger viewers, doubtlessly know him from that. He's recently been King Faraday on the episode of Young Justice that I reviewed the other week. He's, of course, the voice of Savage Opress on Star Wars The Clone Wars. But to me, Clancy Brown will always and forever be chiefly the Kurgan from the original Highlander movie. Now, folks, I'm a big Highlander fan. I've loved the first movie. Let's not talk about any of the other movies. They're all terrible, except for the original Highlander. Let's leave it at that. Highlander TV show had its good seasons and bad seasons. But the Kurgan, anyway, in the original Highlander movie, is one of my absolute favorite movie villains, and Clancy Brown just brought him like there. I do not have the words for how awesome he was as the Kurgan. I absolutely loved him. So anyway, enough of that. Clancy Brown voicing Taskmaster, very cool. And one thing I do kind of have to point out that I was sort of amused by was he's introduced as Mr. Jaeger. And of course, if you know any German, you understand that Jaeger literally means hunter. Given what he's doing in this episode, that's quite fitting. So anyway, another thing that I did enjoy, this was Taskmaster's line, "I'm great with kids." This made me think of the character Finesse from the Avengers Academy comics, who is widely suspected to be Taskmaster's daughter, and apparently seems to have his exact same abilities. Now, is she? I haven't really been keeping up with that comic book series too much, but it did make. I do like the character, and that line did make me think of her, so I will give the show points for that. But let's talk about my main gripe with this issue, since I've talked about my main strong point for this episode, and that is White Tiger in this episode. This is one where we get to see a little bit more of her character, a little bit of growth from her. I did like that. But here, White Tiger is also incredibly stupid. Now, I want you guys to think carefully about what she says to Taskmaster during the fight. And she basically says to him, wow, after she understands what's going on, like, wow, I'm glad I didn't make the cut. Now, I'm sure Mary Jane did fine on the athletics course, but in all likelihood, who is the only female that he saw that day doing athletics at the same level as White Tiger? In fact, he saw her doing doing athletic stuff. He would have probably just automatically taken notes in his head using that weird little math power that we saw, and then he was just able to take one look at White Tiger, which he did, and was able to copy her moves. So really, right there, Taskmaster, if he was paying any real attention at all, has everything he needs to realize that Ava Ayala is White Tiger. And White Tiger does all, and even if he doesn't, the way she spouted off like that, it basically all but spells it out for him. Like I said, if Taskmaster was paying any attention at all to what was going on when he was doing those assessments, he's got White Tiger's identity figured out, and he certainly now knows that White Tiger is Spider-Man's buddy, so he can follow her right to him. And Ava is supposed to be the smart and mature and common sense person on the team. And, if Taskmaster does his homework on Spider-Man and his amazing friends, then he's got everything he needs to also figure out that Danny Rand is Iron Fist. Now, I am proceeding on the idea that you can see that, glowy yellow energy around Danny's hand when he does that, and that it's not just there for, visual effect, that it is actually something that a person in that world could see with their own two eyes. And if this doesn't really get played up in later episodes, then I am going to be extraordinarily disappointed in the writers, which frankly really saddens me, because as I've mentioned earlier, one of the writers for Man of Action is a fellow by the name of Joe Kelly. And Joe Kelly is a guy who has written Taskmaster before and done really well with him. He did a really cool Deadpool versus Taskmaster story during his run on Deadpool that was one of the highlights of the series. But anyway, speaking of characters that Joe Kelly has written and written well, one of those was Batroc the Leaper. Unfortunately, I can't really say as we got a very well written Batroc here. Although, to be completely fair to the writers, the only writer that I have ever seen in comics or anywhere else who's been able to take Batroc and turn him into something that even turn him into a genuinely credible threat is Ed Brubaker during his Captain America run. But anyway, let's leave that aside. Let's talk about the Batroc we get here. And yeah, here Batroc is basically, he's a Pepe Le Pew level ridiculous portrait of a French person. I mean, during the fight they're playing freaking accordion music, and Batroc is saying absurd things like "The leap is life." Really, we are still doing this in the year 2012? Really? I mean, I understand that this is a kid's show, but really, in 2012, we're still treating people like this just because they're French? Folks, if you actually look at history, hilarious cheese-eating surrender monkeys joke by groundskeeper Willie aside, French people have a pretty impressive track record of kicking butt. And if you look at Savate, the martial arts style for which Batroc is known in the Marvel Universe to be a master, that's not something to screw around with. I've seen people doing Savate in a documentary I saw on the History Channel one time. I think it was actually an episode of, what was it, Ultimate Fighter? No, Human Weapon. Yeah, pretty sure that's what it is. Yeah, if you know Savate, you can do some pretty serious damage to people. I mean, it is basically a form of kickboxing, and kickboxing is no joke. So, Batroc, if he's done well, should have been somebody who could have, ridiculous orange and purple costume aside, been a genuine challenge for Spider and White Tiger. Here, he's only a challenge as they present him because, Spidey's not taking him seriously. And if the only way a villain can be presented as any kind of match for the hero is if the hero isn't taking them seriously, if Spider-Man isn't taking this guy seriously, why should I? Okay, let's step away from the angry stuff for a minute, and let's talk about at least one good point of the episode. And that was that they did have a little bit of a nod to Spider-Man's previous encounter with Doctor Doom. We also got a return appearance by Stan the janitor, so it's Stan Lee, and as always, he's being Stan Lee, but doing a great job of it. And Stan's appearance, it did start off being amusing and interesting, and of course we got another reference to Irving Forbush. I wonder how long it'll be before he makes a reference to Willie Lumpkin. Or does that only happen until when the Fantastic Four inevitably guest star? Anyway, and while Stan's appearance was fine when they started getting into the Amazing Spider-Man and the Spectacular Spider-Man, it's like, okay, look, I'm sure the people who are fans of the Spectacular Spider-Man cartoon from a couple of years back probably got a kick out of it. And I know you're trying to do this as a shout out to the comic book fans, but really, guys, you don't have to beat me over the head with it. I know who Stan Lee is. I sure as heck know about Ultimate Spider-Man. I'm sorry, Spectacular Spider-Man and Amazing Spider-Man. I mean, Amazing Spider-Man's been on the shelves longer than I've been alive. I mean, it came out during what? The Kennedy administration, the first issue? Yeah, the Kennedy administration, 63 if I remember right. So yeah, not too crazy about any of that. Now, as I had said, I really did enjoy their take on Taskmaster this episode. He is, as I said, presented as a very credible threat. He's presented as, a backstabber, a double dealer, a guy with his own agenda, and I do think that's a really nice addition to what we have going on villain-wise here. He's more than just a flunky. I like that he's a guy with his own plans, and him sort of lying to Dr. Octopus really sort of makes him a player in what is bound to happen later on. But what really gets me, what really bugs me, is that Taskmaster in that costume, where he is thought to wear a mask under his mask, has given apparently no thought to what happens if somebody I'm fighting turns out the lights. Seriously, apparently you can defeat Taskmaster by flipping a freaking switch. And while I do have to give, Peter and Aya credit for changing costumes and doing all this to throw Taskmaster off, that, I admit, was a good plan. The fact that Taskmaster really did not see something that basic and did not build night vision into his costume, to me, it just makes him seem dumb. But anyway, let's talk a little bit about the character development this episode. Not a whole lot, to be frank. However, as I did say, this was an episode where we get to see a little bit of bonding between Spidey and Ava. And I think she's the one who's been one of the characters on the show who's been needing it the most. And by the end of it, she has admitted that Peter is right and that his way of doing things has value. And I do appreciate that. It does say that Ava is someone who can admit that she's wrong. And given the way she's acted the last several episodes, that's desperately been needed. Especially since, if you think about it, Peter was the one who was being smart there by doing stuff that protected his secret identity. Danny and Luke and Aya blew it completely. They publicly demonstrated that they are people of extreme athletic prowess at a school that is already closely associated as a place where at least one superhero hangs out. So, really, Peter's is being the one who's being smart by blending into the crowd by doing everything he can to make people think, hey, there's no way in heck Peter Parker could possibly be a superhero. Meanwhile, his three friends, no idea where Alex was this week, are doing exactly the opposite. I'm sorry, guys, that's dumb. There's a reason why Peter Parker and Clark Kent do what it is they do. And even Bruce Wayne acts completely like a guy who you would never in a million years suspect is Batman. You guys need to take a page out of their books and start showing a little bit of humility. Anyway, folks, overall, this episode, like I said, had its good points, had its bad points. I'm going to officially call this an okay episode. Hopefully things will get better. Anyway, I'm almost out of time. So as always, please comment, rate, and subscribe. You can also, of course, follow me on Twitter as Who's Your Jedi. Until next time, everybody, have a good one.